Wow, that's the first time I have had to yell to get the room to quiet down. Well done. Hi everyone. Good morning. Can we get a quick round of applause for Kate, who literally ran all over town to get a projector and cream because I didn't. Welcome to the Vermont Ag Water Quality Partnership Northwest Region August 2024 meeting is the formal title that we're going with today. Really grateful and for your patience and for your creativity and your artwork. I would like to strongly suggest that you continue doing artwork the whole time. And presenters, it's not rude. I told them to do it. If you need anything, there are bathrooms on every floor. I was not aware that the elevators would not be working today. I apologize. Feel free to get up, stand in the back, walk around, do what you got to do for your body. We do have some snacks that are of lower quality than normal. I apologize. I did not make dessert this time. There will be tacos. And based on the number of people in the room, I think enough tacos. If you weren't here last time, we ran out of food and that was bad. There's coffee and seltzers and anything you could possibly need for liquid intake up there. Please just get up anytime. Thanks for signing in. I think that's all the things I was going to say. You will have on your table, there's two flyers. One is Why Farmers Spread Manure. That was actually done in partnership with an artist in, she's actually working for the Schwanger Family Farm in the Dairy Grazing Apprentice Program. And it's like, she's a great artist. So that's really cool. And then there's also a fun event coming up on Saturday that Dorothy's running, Bike Along the Black Creek. If you guys, it's supposed to be a beautiful day. It's BYOB, bring your own bike. So 2 o'clock at the East Fairfield Center, and you'll go down the rail trail, and that'll be really fun. If you're feeling so inspired by how much fun you're having today and want to have more fun. Okay. I will encourage folks, I'm not going to do forced networking today, but I am noticing some patterns at the various tables. And so feel free to, when we have some networking breaks, talk to someone you don't know that you don't work with at the same agency every day. NRCS table, VACD table, FSA table plus Tucker. And I'm gonna call it agency bag too. So feel free to like mix it up. Sorry, also agency bag, maybe. Yes, no, VACD, but this is a little bit mixed.
We're mixing up.
This is a little bit mixed over here. Be like them. Interrupt me at any point in time too, because why not? We're gonna hear from a lot of different folks today and adjust as needed with timing because we're a little behind. But folks on Zoom too, just so you know, the sound is not on. So if you need to get a hold of us, raise your hand or put something in the chat, please. Because the audio is not working either. So, okay. Here's our agenda. So we're actually not that bad yet. We're not that far behind. Oh, that looks terrible. Sorry, let me fix that. Hold. Is anyone's brain functioning right now? No, nobody's? Okay, cool. Let me figure this out. Yeah, he's on Zoom. That would probably help. I want to see where the lights are. There's some over there. Folks on Zoom, are you still seeing just the slide? Thank you. Okay. Ooh. Yeah. Aren't we having fun? It's been a freaking year. We got arts and crafts to do. Also, for people not in here, we're doing arts and crafts, farm themed arts and crafts today. Okay. You know what? It is what it is. What it is. Actually, one more announcement. Someone left this here at the last meeting. I don't know if anybody's. I am also noticing I never dumped the water out, so finish yours. There's some archaic water. It's a nice water. Okay. This is what we're gonna go with today, folks. Welcome and mingle. You guys did so good. And community art project. Again, keep working on your art. Allie, would you like to come up and do the land acknowledgement?
Hi, everybody. I'm Allie Lewis, the coordinator with the Vermont Ag Water Quality Partnership. Thank you, Lauren and team, for everything that you've done to pull this together. These little things aren't the things that matter. It's us being together in the work we're doing. So thank you. So this slide is from the VAWQP 2023, I think, annual report. It's a land acknowledgement statement that VAWQP and NRCD developed. But we just wanted to take a moment and acknowledge the Indigenous people of this place, the Abenaki community. Right now we're on ancestral Abenaki homeland in Adakana, the land of the dawn. We're on the shores of Biddabok, Lake Champlain. And the Abenaki community values natural resources really as relationship, but values natural resources in a way that we do and work together to steward it. So thank you for the work you're doing, and we acknowledge this place where we're at. Thanks.
Nina, I think you're next. All right, we're gonna do a little bit of a sharing transition. One moment. Oh, is that what that was? I didn't realize that. It's my chicken. She's a little chicken USB. It's adorable.
All right, so last year in July after the floods, there was 2 or 3 or 4 different organizations that launched a survey to gather input from farms on impacts from flooding. And post July 2023 flooding, there was an effort to bring together what's called the Vermont Agricultural Recovery Task Force. So most of what I'm going to talk about today is sort of like compilation of information and data that task force has really been working to compile since our most recent major flooding events in July. Nice parachutes. There we go.
I guess my the flood 2024.
Yeah, that's
was
great.
okay, great.
Thanks, Lauren. And just these.
Okay, so
Okay. So my name's Nina. I work for the Vermont Agency of Agriculture Food Markets. I'm the assistant director in the Division of Water Quality. So our division does kind of 3 primary things. We inspect farms, we regulate farms for water quality, and we enforce on them when there are issues. We also have a programs section. We have 7 engineers, handful of program staff, and we run 10 technical and financial assistance programs. And then the third big thing that we do is we invest in local partnership organizations who provide direct technical assistance to farms. So that's part of why we're here today, because these are the roles that we play. I'm going to go through a little bit some of the survey data. This is like fresh, hot off the press. Nobody's seen this yet, so hopefully I don't get reprimanded for sharing. Some of the flood issues that we're seeing and the general guidance. I think what I've learned in the past year is that when a flood happens, there are so many more programs. Like the feedback we've been getting from farms the last 3 years, like there's too many programs, it's too complicated, it's overwhelming. Well, flooding's the same thing, right? Like we have state and federal programs and some issues that are regulatory and other issues that are fine. So it's been a learning experience, and I think it will continue to be, but the hope is to share more of what we've learned. So the next time it floods, because we all understand it's going to continue happening, right? We're all a little bit more well prepared to help farmers who walk in our office help farmers who call us up on the phone or in a state of distress or otherwise. And then I've heard FSA is going to present, and is anyone from NRCS going to touch base on programs? Because I'll skip those 2 slides.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so far we have 87 farms, I think it's 88 as of this morning, who've reported losses, about 3,000 acres, almost 5 million in estimated losses, with a 21% of their average annual income being lost as a result of this most recent floods. Just to compare that briefly to last year's floods, it was 264 farms across the state. Every county was impacted. This most recent floods, 10 counties in the state have been impacted, and the acreage was about 27,000 acres that were impacted as a result of last year's flood. So the scale is different, right? We know that the floods this year were not as bad. I think folks have also sort of like had some practice getting ready for floods, so they know what to do. The programs are a little bit more ready to get into action. You guys can't read that, don't worry about it. Just like 4 quick things. When a flood happens, farms are asked to do a lot, and they're all for really good reasons. So I want to just recap the why. So one of the first things folks are asked to do is document damages. When a flood happens, it's like, I can't figure out what to do, right? I don't know how to move forward. The guidance is really to document damages. So that's photographic evidence, maintaining receipts or invoices of any costs that are incurred in immediate, as soon as they sort of like go to fix a road or a culvert so that the milk truck can access the farm. Maintain receipts and document damages. There's 3 places that farms are asked to report their damages, and they're all for different reasons. So I'm going to just walk through those really quick. The first is 211. Everybody's familiar with 211. So 211, what it does is it collects information on damages, and it's what our emergency personnel use to then justify FEMA. Right. So when the state, when a disaster happens, the state has to go to the federal government, to the president, and say, please, we had a terrible disaster. Please come and help us. In order to do that, they have to show a certain threshold of damages in each county. So even if a farm says, well, it's just my farm, this, 211 is not going to help me, it could very well make the difference between whether their neighbors get FEMA assistance or not. So 211 is important for that reason. It directly plays into FEMA eligibility for a county. Okay. The second place is FSA. I'm going to let FSA cover that today, but essentially part of that is identifying programs that the farm might have available to them for recovery assistance. And FSA's programs have notification deadlines. So if a disaster happens, a farm oftentimes needs to provide notice within a certain period of time. So reporting to FSA. And then the third place is we've started in the last 2 years capturing survey data at the state level. This survey data has directly influenced the amount of state money that becomes available to fill gaps. So what do the federal programs cover? What does insurance cover? Typically speaking, there's no guarantee of any additional assistance unless we can document the damages and understand the gap and allocate state funding. But in order to allocate state funding, we got to pull the legislature back together, or the Vermont Emergency Board, and say there's a need. So if we can't document the need, right? Because 211 doesn't ask how many acres were impacted, how many fields were flooded. So it gives us a mechanism of understanding the impacts to ag to then argue for state funding to become available. So these are our next steps when a flood happens and why they're important. All right, so just a couple of interesting kind of tidbits from this most recent flood. We had about 30% of the impacted farms were produce and horticultural, 23% were dairy. The vast majority were small and certified small farms. Most detrimental type of flood loss was loss of crops for sale, followed by loss of crops for feed. Those 2 categories were swapped in last year's flood. We had more loss of crops for feed than we did of crops for sale. This is based on the number of participants indicating what was the most detrimental loss to their business. So that's how this data comes in. Other examples of detrimental flood loss were, soil and land impacts, access roads. Last year, we saw about 70% of respondents indicate that they did not have crop insurance. This is one of the, I would say, small things that we can do in our jobs to change maybe how farms might be managing what's going on their operation. When we talk about disasters and we talk about resilience, insurance is part of that puzzle. As much as we all love insurance, it's part of the puzzle, okay? So we see a lot of produce farms. In this instance, the top line is produce and horticultural, the dark blue being folks who don't have insurance. About 22 of 31 respondents indicated they didn't have crop insurance. And we understand it's really complex for produce farms to get crop insurance. It doesn't always work really well for them. So there's some efforts at the federal level to make changes, but an example of a really great program would be the non-insured assistance program, or NAP, through FSA. So if you're talking with farms, like, one of the things I want you to take away from today is, like, ask the question, like, what are you doing to be more resilient? And if insurance is not on their list, make sure you remind them that when a disaster hits, insurance is their number one first go-to for receiving any amount of financial compensation to support what impacts their business might have had. A little bit less of a percentage on dairy farms. Only 7 out of 19 farms indicated they didn't have insurance. So yeah, insurance is big. I think we're seeing a change there and a lot of outreach, but just be aware there are options for produce farms, and there are options for other types of farms to get crop insurance too. What are the types of damages that were indicated as most common? Damaged land, damaged roads, damage of crops for sale were the 3 primary from this most recent flood. In terms of what respondents indicated they needed, it's primarily financial assistance and support for rebuilding access roads, and a lot of respondents indicating the need to restore stream banks. And then what respondents had proposed as changes to the way they manage their business. That's the graph on the far right. I know you guys can't see that, so just ignore it. This is really interesting. We're starting to ask people, what are you doing in response to disasters? What are you doing on your farm in response to a flood? So we had 29 respondents indicate they're going to try to acquire more land, right? 27 who said they're going to start thinking about different crops. 25 of the 87 indicating, a desire to improve their soil structure. A good chunk, 23, indicating they're going to remove land or take it out of production. And then a really, astounding 14 indicating that their next step is likely to close their business. So the impacts can change depending on the farm, how much land is impacted. But we're seeing sort of a couple of big trends. Land and roads being sort of the primary needs, and financial assistance being really what our farmers are saying they need to be able to recover from floods. And then all kinds of alternative and innovative ways folks are sort of pivoting to stay in business. A couple of quotes from the folks who have filled out this statewide survey from the most recent floods. Bear with me, it's not super, I'll just say it's a little depressing. We have to read through all this stuff, but I thought it was important to share. So the question was, what is your perspective on the financial health of your operation over the next few years? I think with changes to where we plant, the future looks good. I'm not going to be in this position again. By tightening our crop rotation from 4 to 3 years, we can plant less percentage in the floodplain. Unsure as always. Dairy farming is always financially tenuous, and extreme weather just makes it more so. Game changer. I'm not sure if we can keep farming. Depends on the financial assistance we can secure over the next 6 months, coupled with stream bank restoration. It's looking bleak for our operation. The cost of rebuilding our ag land is just too much for a small operation like ours. We've made the decision to stop using our bottomland field for primary production, as it's been completely inundated 4 times since 2019. This represents 1/3 of our operational land base for primary activities, significantly reduces our ability to maintain production numbers, and curtails our capacity to expand farm operations. So we're seeing people pivot to change their rotations, reduce the land that they're farming in the floodplains. A lot of interesting things, and that all ties in, as we know, to maybe how their NMP is designed, or the rotations that they're attempting to follow. So just things to be aware of. Like I alluded to, the biggest impacts, about 75% of respondents indicated damage to lands, 52% damage to roads. Business impacts, 64%, that compares to 70% from last year's floods, indicating they don't have insurance. And again, 51% of respondents with loss of crops for sale or feed. I just wanted to highlight this. So only 6% indicated that mental health resources was something that they would need as a recovery step. But I want to highlight that in my opinion, personal opinion, that 6% doesn't really reflect the written responses that we got. It's the mental stress that it takes to flood from one year to the next and not know if you're going to flood again the next year. puts people in a really particularly like vulnerable situation. So I just want to highlight that mental health is a piece of this, and I think we all know that, but there are resources. Farm First is one that provides they get free counselors. And I always say it's free therapy. And the farmers ask, is it massage? And I'm like, nope, but we're working on it. So the agency, in coordination with the task force, released a toolkit. I'm just going to breeze through a few of these, but so flood debris in fields, what can a farm do? There's guidance from A&R. A lot of this is regulatory guidance about floodplain management rules. I'm just going to share a couple highlights. And again, the goal is that folks have a better understanding the next time it floods, so you feel more comfortable knowing where to go. So I'm going to highlight Kate, not that she works in floodplain management, but she works for DEC. So if you have any questions a little bit later today, you can find Kate and she can help you out. So in-stream debris, farms can remove it if there is flood deposit sediment, rock, woody debris, or human trash. And the big thing is you can't change the dimensions of the river channel. But the landowner needs to notify the town when that happens. For sediment in fields, essentially you can restore the field back to pre-flood conditions. The caveat being that any debris or sediment that it cannot be stored in a floodplain. So in many cases, we suggest reaching out to contact a floodplain manager to say, we have all the sediment, we're going to move it. What's the best place for us to store it? A lot of farms last season, they were like, I'm going to push this to the side of the field and I'm going to put my cover crop in. And we're like, yeah, cover cropping is great, but they're not going to be really happy that you burned up the whole side of the river. So sediment is okay to be moved, restored to pre-flood conditions. It needs to be moved and stored or stockpiled outside of the floodplain. And there's folks through the floodplain managers who can help you identify that. We can do riprap, and it is okay. It just needs to follow NRCS or AMP. Forestry. Thank you. And again, it just can't narrow the channel. That's the sort of guiding principle. And then for river channel work that's like a little bit more long term, there's river engineers who can come out and assist people. They get really busy post flood, especially sort of helping support municipalities. So they have a contact form that they typically set up when a flood happens, and you could put that in and say, a farm's dealing with this, they want to talk more big picture, long term, and they'll get to them when they have the chance to do so. So road issues. There's not a lot of programs that pay and help people support rebuilding roads. I'm hoping FSA will talk a little bit about what they can support in that space. But I think it's just important for folks to know there's not likely to be anyone on a farm's doorstep the day after a flood and say, here's money to fix your road or culvert. It's just not. Roads, culverts, bridges are not typically covered under a farm's liability insurance. They just aren't. And FSA, again, has some stuff they can assist with unimproved farm roads. So hopefully they'll talk a little bit more about that. The state's VAWQP program. So connecting back to why do we need to report in so many places? Because there's gaps. So we want to make state funding available. So the state VAWQP program has supported road repair as an eligible cost. But again, the farm needs to maintain those invoices and the photos of the issues when that happens. And we've got a team of engineers if folks need assistance. That can help provide technical and engineering assistance. It's not typically something that gets supported through cost share to fix roads, but flooded produce, I think everyone probably has heard this by now, but essentially if it's crops grown for human consumption, as soon as they're flooded, they are considered adulterated. They cannot be sold for human consumption. So there's a lot of questions like, well, what if only the tip of the plant, or what if the middle of the plant was flooded, or I'm growing a crop and the roots were flooded, but the plant was, my tomatoes were not, just the roots. The guidance from the law behind this is any part of the plant that's edible that was flooded is no longer can be sold. There is free soil testing through UVM available for commercial veg and berry growers. Last year, UVM made it available for all farms flooded. This year, it's just commercial veg and berry. Hay crops. So a lot of folks do go out and cut, or, they do harvest their hay before flood comes in. It's a good sort of measure in advance of potential flooding. But essentially, what happens when hay fields flood is they can be a source of pathogens. Specifically, once hay is harvested, you can get mycotoxins, which are poisonous to both animals and humans. So mycotoxin testing is what we recommend for folks who harvest any flooded hay. And we really, generally the guidance from agronomists is not to harvest heavily silted hay crops. it would be to sort of clip and store and dispose of. And if it is a need, farmer doesn't have an option, they, financially it's a major concern, dry hay harvesting is recommended versus fermenting. Corn crops. So Heather's team worked up some good estimates of yield reductions depending on how much time the corn is flooded for. Essentially, the biggest concern is respiration of the roots. So once the corn can't breathe, the corn roots can't breathe, it starts to impact, the corn development. And specifically, there's some nitrogen stuff that comes into play. So typically, if you have a farm who's flooded, they're trying to figure out what to do. Considering whether additional nitrogen is needed is a good consideration for them because it can sort of mess with the interplay of nutrient cycle when it comes to nitrogen. And again, pasture is sort of the same as hay. Like if it's flooded and heavily silted, it can be very dangerous for animals. So essentially the guidance is to clip any contaminated pasture and ideally wait until the next year to graze it. But if folks do need to graze it, the recommendation is don't graze it too closely. So like move them in, move them out pretty quick and make sure there's plenty of residual because that's where some of that silt and those pathogens will sit at the base of the plant. Organic stuff. So if a farm has a certified organic and they get flooded, there are some considerations at play. If they're located downstream from a major pollutant source, that is one of the concerns that NOFA or other organic certifiers or VAWQP, or other organic certifiers are going to look at. One of the big things is if any wells are flooded, they will request that well get retested for things like E. coli. And again, if you have pasture and you're organic, you really shouldn't be pasturing on a flooded pasture. And there are some pasture waivers, right? So if you're organic, they need to be out. Farm can't meet their organic certification requirements. They can work with VAWQP or NOFA to get essentially a waiver to the national organic standards as a result of there being a disaster. So I want to just reflect that sometimes there's the conversations around, I need to improve my land, repair my land post flooding. There's also a lot of business considerations that come into play. Like we've lost 20% of our income and I don't know how we're going to pay for our employees. So business advising is a really great referral in many cases so that farms can get some of that hands-on business support. Additionally, some of the programs require documentation that the farm might not have available. So what was your income last year and how does that compare to this year? Or do you have, certain business information? So I just want to point this out. VHCB has business planners. They typically do a 2-year-long program. They've taken their business planners and made them all have time in their schedule to do some short-term flood assistance. So they don't necessarily need to sign up for this full 2-year viability program. They can access business assistance for a short-term need. All right, I'm going to cruise through these. So again, kind of general insurance considerations just to be aware of. Private insurance is one of the primary sources, private insurance or USDA crop insurance, to recover crop losses. And again, even when you have crop insurance, it doesn't actually pay for the whole loss. So if I have a cornfield, I lose the whole cornfield, I have crop insurance on it, the crop insurance is probably going to come in and say, okay, you lost the whole field, maybe you're eligible. Well, they're going to pay what's 50% of the estimated cost that you would have received from that corn crop. So they're never going to pay for the full amount. That's just everybody needs to understand that. Even when you have insurance, you're never going to get paid out for the full amount of loss. And then under liability insurance, farm buildings are covered. Otherwise, tractors, equipment, and livestock. And then, so roads, culverts, and bridges. That's the big piece here. Roads, culverts, and bridges are not under liability. Okay, so if you have a road washed out, the farm's not going to be able to get access to farm liability insurance to help cover the cost of that. NOFA does have emergency grants. So it's $2,500 for folks who are members and need to have been a member for at least a year, and then $5,000 grants for folks who are certified organic. FSA is going to talk about FSA programs. I'll just touch on a couple of our programs at the agency VAG. So in the water quality division, we have a couple of programs that might be a good fit for farms coming out of a recent flood event. Folks are familiar with the FAP program. We provide agronomic assistance. We just closed our deadline for the fall, which is August 1st. So send them to NRCS. The deadline is August 23rd. CREP is a program that can help take land out of production. So we had a handful of farms who last year they flooded and folks went out and they were like, no, I'm not really interested in taking this land out of production. Well, we went back this year, we got flooded again. They're like, maybe we should talk, so I think that when people have multiple impacts year after year, they sort of revisit opportunities that they might not have been as willing to take on previously. Things to know about CREP is, typically we're putting riparian buffers in through this program. If you put a filter strip in through CREP, it cannot be harvested. Its purpose is filtration. So we have an alternative program that can offer payable or harvestable buffers. Previously called the grass water refilter strip. We're going to rebrand and re-release. It's called the seeding and filter strip program under its new release. And the goal is to really seed down areas adjacent to water. So we're talking about hayable buffers, mechanisms to allow farms to manage more perennial land adjacent to rivers and to manage it as hay land. So designing it in a way where it's like, okay, it's 2 or 3 times the size of their hay equipment, so they can go in there, harvest a good couple of bales, and it's worth their while. And then the pasture surface water fencing program, we have in some cases supported folks like if their laneways got washed out through a flood to help repair. So those are the 4 I'll touch on. Oh, I always get scared talking about FEMA, but I'm going to give it a go. Just bear with me. So like I said, why do we report to 211? FEMA. Thanks, Lauren. 211 helps determine FEMA. So just earlier this week, we got official news that a number of counties are approved for FEMA assistance. It's the primary financial program. Folks who are residentially flooded in like their house are going to get assistance. It's not that much. Typically, it's $40,000 if they can show that much damage, which is terrible, right? You have like a couple $100,000 house, you get flooded, and the federal government's like, here's $40,000. That's it. Go on with your life. So it's terrifying. But it is the program, and that's why it's so important that we report to 211 and we help folks who are flooded report to 211. So individual assistance, again, it's supporting people who have impacts from disasters, rental assistance, home repair, home replacement, lodging, and other expenses. There's also a public assistance program. So this is really for municipalities or governments. They get up to 75% reimbursement for storm repairs to public infrastructure. All of this, all these counties have been approved for FEMA are just for the July 7th through 10th, not the July 30th event. They're submitting a separate request with separate 211 data to see if we can get FEMA for July 30th. And then one really important change to FEMA individual assistance from March of this year, any farm who is an individual sole proprietor is now eligible through FEMA individual assistance. Previously, they were required to go to SBA, Small Business Administration, get denied for a loan, and then they could go back to FEMA and say, I need help, I'm an individual sole proprietor. They no longer have to go to SBA. They can just go to FEMA IA and say, I'm an individual sole proprietor, I need assistance. And FEMA can support an additional $40,000 on top of the initial for replacing disaster damage tools and equipment that's needed for their job. So it's a big, important change. And then on August 8th, the State Emergency Board met and they allocated an additional $7 million for BGAP, the Business Emergency Gap Assistance Program. The data that the state captures through the Agency VAWQP survey helps the legislature understand how much money is needed there. Let's see, a couple of things to highlight. 30% up of uncovered damages. So they're looking at what damage you had, what did insurance pay, what did you get from FSA, what did you get from donations in your town? And 30% of that uncovered balance, up to $100,000, they're eligible for basically a grant up to that amount. And we are very lucky they have set aside 40% of this entire program budget for farms. Compared to last year, it was a $10 million pot and they gave ag $1 million. So this year we have 40% of $7 million, which is great. Lots of paperwork needed for this, including tax returns. So again, if you have farms who are flooded, you're working with them, make sure they have access to a business advisor to help them get all the paperwork right. Because if you apply and you don't get the paperwork right, there's a chance you're going to miss the boat. That's all I got.
I don't have any fancy presentations. I brought my clipboard though with some notes.
Okay.
Oh, great. So I'm not sure if everybody's heard. So EWP. Sorry. I am Sarah. I am the district conservationist in the St. Albans office for NRCS. EWP, it is one of our emergency watershed programs. That program runs continuously. If there are flooding events, it's a little bit slightly different process than our normal programs. Bob Thompson and Mike LaPointe are the ones that handle that program, but basically towns can sponsor folks that have had damage, and it's a trickle of an application with a myriad of things I'm not going to go through because you're never going to remember them anyways, but it is a program out there that folks can utilize possibly, but they have to go through the state office, Bob Thompson and Mike LaPointe. Last year, if you remember, NRCS did offer a EQIP disaster assistance program. This year, it has been decided that we will not be offering a specific disaster assistance program, but we have a multitude of other programs such as EQIP, CSP, AMA, and RCPP. The sign-up deadline for that is tomorrow. So if you haven't already signed, if landowners haven't already signed up, they can continually sign up, but they would be in the next funding pool. The new RCPP 3273 DEC agreement, it does have added goals in there with flood resiliency. So that is another option that folks can apply for. And then we do also have a local funding pool with a sign up of not only August 23rd, but October 31st. So that could potentially be another avenue for some landowners out there. I think all of you are mostly aware of some of the program practices that we offer, such as access road, forest trails, and stuff like that. Other practices that might help with flood resiliency, such as cover cropping or seed downs, grassed waterways, filter strips. Each disaster that does happen is taken into consideration. The higher ups, not necessarily myself, are involved in all those conversations. So each disaster is looked at and evaluated to make a determination if NRCS will offer any other potential disaster assistance programs. But with NRCS, the way the funding works is if we do a disaster assistance, it comes out of the regular funding. It's not additional funding. So in a sense, it then takes away from our regular funding, which is what happened last year with our disaster assistance funds. It was basically pulled from the regular pot. So when, we saw the pre-approvals for regular applications and they were sort of down in number, we were like, why? Well, come to find out, monies were already used through the disaster assistance program. Obviously, it's all going out to folks that need it. So it's great. It's just, we want regular funding too. So it's a balance that they have to evaluate. NRCS does also provide technical assistance to Farm Service Agency. We help with their ECP and EFRP evaluations. And that's all I have. So I'm going to hand it over to Allie.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm sharing. Okay, I think that's right.
Okay, what button is it? Do I just hit like the next?
arrows.
Okay. I'm Allie. I'm the County Executive Director here in St. Albans. So I'm just going to touch really briefly on what we offer. FSA programs is a whole beast. So I'm just going to quick overview, tell you what we offer, kind of how they work. So we have several programs to help with disaster recovery, financial assistance. We have ECP, Emergency Conservation Program, EFRP, Livestock Assistance, NAP was mentioned in an earlier presentation, and we also have LIP, Livestock Indemnity. So what kind of triggers these programs? A natural disaster has to occur. These are just a few examples: flooding, wind, rain, hail, any kind of natural disaster. Volcanic eruption is covered, even though we won't ever see it here. I'm not going to touch on disaster designations because it's really complicated.
they're not required to request these programs. Disaster designations really only open up emergency lending for FSA. So emergency loans, disaster set-asides, which basically just moves a payment to the end of the term. They're not required. We don't need them. I know they're helpful for everyone else. You have to meet, I think it's a 30% threshold in loss in order to kind of trigger that. ECP. So ECP is designed to assist with financial help to cropland and what we call other ag. So other agricultural land, not including forest, because that's covered under EFRP. So other agricultural land could be like the barnyard, if for some reason the damage to a barnyard was significant enough to impede normal farming operations and cause resource concerns. We have to go through an environmental review before any kind of repair work can start. So we have to do a bunch of different consultations. It can take 30+ days to complete this because we have to reach out to SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office, which they have a 30-day timeline basically if they to respond to us. Farm roads is really case by case. If it's not improved, so basically dirt 2-lane tractor road, we can possibly cover it. Like I said, it's really case by case. Not saying we can't, it's just talk to us about it. If it's improved, so like there's water bars, it's engineered, we can't typically touch that because it's not considered cropland. ECP payments are considered cost share based. So we use payment scenarios, which I'll show you an example of one on the next slides, which have a set price on them. So it's not based on what they're actually spending to repair cropland. It's based on these scenarios that we have. They're NRCS scenarios. And then we can't disperse funds to a producer until everything is done. We have to certify that everything is up to standard if it's something that needs NRCS assistance, technical assistance. And so everything has to be done, certified before we can disperse funds. Producers are allowed to ask for advance payment, only up to 50% of what they're approved for. But they have to request that. This is an example of one of our payment scenarios. So this is removal of debris from farmland. We have this whole little write-up about what it covers. So before, it's for crop farm or ranch land. The typical size of this is 10 acres. It's typically for 10 acres, it's $3,800. So $382 an acre. And then this is kind of the details. So if you need a skid steer, 80 horsepower, truck, tractor, trailers, labor, equipment operators, mobilization, this is what's all accounted for in that cost that it came up for. So the tricky part of ECP is figuring out which scenario kind of fits the producer best. How do we get ECP? Let's see. To request ECP, the producer has to call us. We can't preemptively go, oh, it flooded down in Fairfax along the Lamoille River. We're gonna go and request ECP. We can't preemptively request to run a program. They have to call us. They have to report damages. We also have a county emergency board. So our county emergency board will meet and talk about the damages that was reported to us. Typically, it would be the CED, the DC, RD, if there is a rural development presence in that county, and your county forester. So they sit down, they talk, they recommend that ECP is needed. There's people that had damage. The county committee then has to meet and discuss, yes, let's approve their recommendation. Then it's taken and put into our software. The state specialist has to approve it, which then it gets sent to our national office and it's approved at a national level. So it does take some time to get approval to implement ECP. We can take an application at any point. It's just not guaranteed that they'll get that assistance until we have the approval in place. What does ECP help with? We can help with removing debris from farmland, such as cleanup of wind or water deposited debris, woody materials, sand, rock, and trash on cropland and pasture land. And it's more for out west, but we can clear snow from feedstocks, water supplies, and feeding areas. Grading, shaping, leveling land, such as filling gullies, re-leveling irrigated farmland, and incorporating sand and silt. Restoring fences, so livestock cross fences, boundary fences, cattle gates, or wildlife exclusion fence on agricultural land. Restoring conservation structures such as waterways, terraces, diversion ditches, and permanently installed ditching systems. Like with farm roads, ditching systems, culverts are really case by case. There's a lot of permitting that has to go into place for ditches. We typically try not to touch them. So case by case, we can assist with that. And then also in case of severe drought, we can provide emergency water for grazing and confined livestock, as well as existing irrigation systems for orchards and vineyards. EFRP, it's very similar to ECP, however, it's for forest land. So to be eligible, it must have some kind of natural resource damage caused by a natural disaster that, if not treated, would impair or endanger the natural resources on the property and would affect the future use of the land. So typically what we're looking for in eligibility for EFRP is that they have a forest management plan. They're managing that forest for some kind of agricultural use. We've had a lot of questions last year surrounding recreational trails. And typically recreational trails are not covered. It has to be managed for some kind of forest or ag purpose. So to request EFRP is the same process as ECP. We have to get the report. The county emergency board has to meet. It goes to the county committee, the state, and then national. And this is also a cost share based program, meaning based on payment scenarios. EFRP practices include debris removal, such as down or damaged trees, in order to establish a new stand or provide natural regeneration. We cover site preparation, planting materials, and labor to replant forest stand, restoration of forest land roads, fire lanes, fuel breaks or erosion control structures, fencing, tree shelters, and tree tubes to protect trees from wildlife damage, and wildlife enhancement to provide cover openings for wildlife habitat. ELAP is also another program that we offer. This isn't disaster. I mean, it's disaster triggered. You have to be affected by some kind of natural disaster. However, it's a it's got its own program year. So it runs every year until July 30th of the subsequent year. So we provide financial assistance to eligible producers of livestock, honeybees, and farm-raised fish for losses due to disease, certain adverse weather events, or loss conditions. ELAP is provided losses for losses not covered by other disaster assistance programs, such as by LFP, which is for drought. We don't typically qualify for drought in Vermont, and the livestock indemnity program, which I'll talk about later. Like I said, ELAP runs every calendar year, so you have to apply by January 30th of the subsequent year that your disaster occurred in. Farm bill funding does expire on September 30th, so we're only authorized for ELAP until January 30th of 2025. So without an extension or a new farm bill, this program will be halted after then. Yeah, so they're only authorized typically depending on the program year. Sometimes it's fiscal year, which ends 9/30. Other times it's calendar year. So the farm bill was only extended for 1 year. So everything is kind of coming to a halt. So to be eligible for ELAP, you have to have grazing acres certified on your acreage report. That limits a lot of producers in Vermont. Confined dairy operations are not eligible for ELAP assistance unless they somehow graze dry cows or young stock. And then they're only eligible for the animals that are grazing on that grazing land. We can't assist them with any kind of feed losses or transportation costs for the cows that are confined. We don't really see very many honeybee or farm-raised fish applications in Vermont, so I was not going to speak about it today. If for some reason a honeybee producer or someone that grows fish was affected, then they can reach out to their county office. NAP provides financial assistance to producers of non-insurable crops. So anything that you can't get typical crop insurance on through an agent. In order to be eligible, it has to result in a lower yield or crop loss or prevents crop planting. NAP is not a disaster response program. This is risk mitigation. They have to be signed up and have coverage in place at the time of the disaster. It's a safety net. It's not designed as an after product. There are several different coverage options for NAP. It's quite a complicated program, so I'm only briefly going into it. It does cost the farmer an admin fee, which is $325 per crop. If the farmer is what we call SDA, socially disadvantaged, so women farmer, veteran farmer, beginning farmer under 10 years. If they are certified one of those categories, then that fee is waived. If they buy up their coverage, then there is a fee based on their actual production and the coverage that they selected. Again, if they're SDA certified, that fee is reduced by 50%. NAP qualifying losses vary depending on the coverage level that they have selected. If a producer only has catastrophic coverage, which is what we call 50-55, they have to lose over half of the crop in order to trigger a payment. And then the payment is issued based on their actual production up to their coverage level. So catastrophic coverage will only pay farmers 55% of our state set price for a crop. And I have an example here. Buy-up coverage allows 100% of a crop or of a price for a crop. So example, farmer Joe has 1 acre of green peppers. In a typical year, he harvests 8,000 pounds. The state set a price for green peppers at $1.95 a pound. This year, Farmer Joe experienced flooding and only harvested 3,000 pounds of peppers. His payment for NAP would be based off the difference between his actual production and his coverage level. So for CAP coverage, the 50-55, he would be paid for 1,000 pounds of peppers, because that's the difference between his actual production at 3,000 pounds and 50% at 4,000 pounds. And his payment would be 55% of the $1.95 per pound of 1,000 pounds. So that would be $1,072.50. If Farmer Joe had purchased buy-up coverage, he would be paid, say he purchased the 65-100. So he would be paid for 2,200 pounds, because that's the difference between what he harvested and 65% of his production at 8,000 pounds. And he would be paid 100% of our set market value of that 2,200 pounds. So his payment would have been $4,290 if he had purchased up. Lines for reporting losses to FSA for NAP. If it's a hand harvested crop, which most veggie farms are hand harvesting their crops, they have 72 hours to report this to us. They don't have to sign an application or sign any kind of form in that 72 hours, but they have to call us and notify us within that 72-hour period in order to be eligible. Last year, this rule was waived. So in case of widespread disaster, a lot of the times the national office will notify us this rule is waived. You know, you can continue taking applications. So it's important to check in with us and see kind of where things are at. If it is a mechanically harvested crop, such as hay or corn, well, we can't cover corn because that's RMAs, but like hay, we do cover hay, then you have 15 days to report to us. The livestock indemnity program. It provides benefits to eligible livestock owners or contract growers for livestock deaths in excess of normal mortality caused by eligible loss conditions, including eligible weather, disease, and attacks by animals reintroduced to the wild by federal government or protected by federal law. We've had people come to us saying that coyotes are getting my calves. Unfortunately, that's not a loss. Coyotes, you can manage the population. We've had people come to us saying the eagles are eating our calves. We can assist you, eagles are protected. So we don't see a lot of it here, but it does happen. So any kind of federally protected animal attacking your herd, we can help with that, as well as my cows drowned, my pigs drowned, anything like that. We also assist livestock owners that sell their livestock for a reduced price due to injury or illness based on one of those events. The livestock have to be maintained for commercial use as part of a farming operation. So like Farmer Joe's raising 3 beef cows for personal consumption. That's not a commercial use. We can't help you with that. So the payments are adjusted for normal mortality, which is set at a national level. And payments are based on 75% of a national average fair market value of the livestock. And that is all I had today. That is my contact information in case anybody has any questions. I just realized this morning that I did not include information on our tree assistance program. So that is similar to ECP and EFRP, but it's for like Christmas trees and nursery crops. So that is also an option for assistance.
Thanks, Allie. You guys did so good. You get rewarded with a networking break. We're gonna do, sorry, this isn't showing up right. Hold on. Keep doing wonky things. Got a half hour, which is very generous, which means lunch is gonna be fast later. So if you've ever hung out with one of my parties before, you know I don't like having the networking being when you're eating tacos. It's not ideal. Yes, so you've got a half hour. Please meet somebody new. I'm not gonna do forced icebreaker activities like I normally do. Please meet somebody new. Get some more coffee, go to the bathroom. We're gonna come back here at 11. I'm gonna get a presentation from the drone team. And then we'll have lunch. We'll get your lunch, we'll bring it back to your table. And then we'll do individual org updates while people are eating lunch and making messes. But right now, like, have a clean, nice networking break. And come back around 11. Thanks. Keep arguing. We'll be on after this, but think like this. All yours. Right.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shannon Hardy. I'm a GIS UAV technician for VACD.
I'm also a GIS and UAV technician for VACD.
And we are here to talk about the VACD UAV program and how it can assist you all. We'll talk about some recent projects that we've done, the 2 drones that we have, and then hoping to hear from you all at the end how we can help you in the future. So as we said, we both work for VACD, and VACD is a nonprofit and is in a partnership with NRCS. So we both work out of NRCS offices. We are in the Colchester State office, and then our other team member, Luke, who's not here, is in the Berlin field office. So as part of our position, we received an FAA license to operate the drones in our fleet. Under USDA NRCS policy, USDA is not allowed to own or operate drones. So VACD can own and operate drones on the behalf of NRCS. So VACD and NRCS have formed a partnership where NRCS is providing VACD in our program with funding support, and in return, VACD is flying drones to help NRCS in their conservation work. So this program was founded in around 2019, 2020 by Izzy Basluk and Lauren Newman. They contributed a lot of research to the program and eventually purchased 2 different drones for the program. In 2022, the program was awarded the Conservation Innovation Grant. So that funding is currently going towards our research on purchasing additional hardware that could help the program and expand the work that we can do and help others in different ways. So
The two of us came on in 2023 at different points of the year. We are currently in the process of purchasing some of those hardwares. And then in the past year, we've also done a lot of outreach to NRCS and also partners, just getting the word out about this program and how we can help you all. These are the two drones in our fleet. I think you can kind of see them, but the drone here on the left, the white one, was purchased first. It's named after Rachel Flyson. So this one is a little bit smaller, and recently we've used this for promotional imagery shots, and then any sort of smaller projects with a smaller acreage. And then our other drone is a DJI Matrice, much larger in size, probably about this big. And this drone is great because we've been able to fly it on much larger areas. We've flown quite a few projects on over 200 acres, and we've had no problem with this drone. It can withstand higher wind speeds. The batteries on this can last a longer area. And then one other thing that we really appreciate about this drone is its ability to capture high accurate location data. So this is very helpful in generating elevation data, contour lines that could be shared with engineers or others that need that high accurate location data. These are the three main steps in our data process. So first off, we'll have someone submit a flight request. Typically, and just this is in the past, that has been someone from NRCS, or we've also had flight requests from conservation districts. We're hoping to expand who we're working with and hoping to work with you all as partners as well. But in the past, that has just typically been who we have worked closest with. So after that flight request is submitted, we will get on a call, receive some more details about the project, the conservation practices that are being planned, and then plan a time to go out into the field. When we go out into the field, two of us at a minimum will head out, sometimes all three of us. We'll have one person be the pilot of the drone, and then the other person will participate as a visual observer. The person that submits the flight request is more than welcome to come out and join. We love to talk with folks and hear what you're doing and receive some more details about the project. But you also do not have to come out. It's a personal choice. We're hoping that the drone can save planners and engineers, foresters time. So this could be a time-saving aspect to not go out to the field and walk the entire perimeter and have the drone capture that imagery instead. After our field visit, we will process that data. So we'll head back into the office and then we can share the data over a cloud-based software called SiteScan. So this cloud-based process is great because it can just be shared with a link. It's very easy to interact with. You don't need NRCS credentials to see the imagery, which we also really appreciate that some folks have shared this imagery with landowners as well, and they have liked to see their land from a different perspective. Our most commonly requested data product is orthomosaic data. So this is very similar to, say, a satellite imagery that you may see on Google Maps or Google Earth. So when the drone is out, it'll take all these photos, and then those photos are stitched together in the processing software to create the orthomosaic data product. We can also share elevation data with folks. This has specifically been asked for engineers, and this will help with any engineering related practices that need that high accurate location data.
I want to talk about a couple examples of projects that we've done, and hopefully that gives you a better sense of what we're actually talking about and some of the work that we're doing. And again, hopefully getting you all thinking about how you might want to use this in your own work. So this first flight was one we did actually about a year ago now. This was with the Orleans County NRCD. This was along the Barton River. And in this case, they had a landowner who had some kind of unproductive corn that they were growing down by the river, and they were interested in at least exploring some floodplain restoration. So Orleans County reached out to us. They asked if we could get some imagery and some elevation data so that they could better understand the site. But they were also really interested in having kind of a visual that they could work with the landowner and kind of show him this land from a new perspective and maybe talk about different options and maybe why this land might be better served to be restored back to floodplain. So I'm going to actually try to pull up the imagery and hopefully it looks okay. I promise it's cool. Cool.
Just make sure that Zoom can see it too.
Computer people always need help, you know,
Mhm.
that's our job. But
Mhm. I know.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
cool. Okay. Maybe a little hard to see, but if anyone wants to see kind of a higher resolution version of it, feel free to kind of come find us and we can show it to you. But as Shannon mentioned, this is kind of a dynamic image. So not just static imagery, we can kind of pan around and we can zoom in and out. And as we zoom, you'll see it's pretty, well, maybe you won't see, but it's it's pretty high resolution imagery. So with our drone, we're able to capture a much higher resolution than you would get from satellite imagery, which can give you really cool insights into what's going on in the land. If you could see this, you would see that there are some really giant gullies kind of forming in this cornfield and eroding down into the river. And you can also see some pretty clear differences in productivity across the field. So certain areas where it's too wet and the corn isn't growing. Yeah, I really wish you could see it a little better, but do feel free to bug us. Sorry, Lauren, it's working great. Do feel free to yeah, bug us. We're happy to show it to you. Want to show just another quick example if it loads. This is the same site, a slightly different product. This is what we call like a panorama. It's pretty similar to a panorama that you might shoot on your phone where you're kind of spinning around. We send the drone up, it spins in a circle and takes a bunch of photos. And we have this kind of dynamic image we can zoom in and out of. It's really dark, but kind of a nice different perspective for landowners. And we're able to give this off to Orleans County and they could kind of use it as a way as they're kind of having these conversations with the landowner, you know, being able to show them that land and show them kind of some potential alternatives for the future. Lauren, if I want to go back to my PowerPoint.
Yeah.
And if I don't want to overwhelm you, but I am going to then leave the PowerPoint again.
I am
So,
very
okay.
aware
Okay.
by the number of things I had to open for you guys.
We're very difficult to work with.
So difficult. It's tech people. Next slide.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. Cool. This is a project that we did just a couple weeks ago and hopefully is a little more topical as we talked a lot about flooding today. But this was a flight we did for the NRCS wetlands team. This was over in Cabot, Vermont on a wetland easement. And we wanted to get out after the flooding this summer to assess if there were any damages to the easement and also any potential changes to hydrology after the flooding. So I think I can figure this out, right? I just stop. Cool. Won't do it. Yeah. I get scared easily. Cool. Maybe you can see it a little better now. I'll turn off kind of this background imagery so we can focus a little more on what we actually did. But this is the site we flew. And kind of the first thing is it's a really large site. So we're able to cover this ground much quicker than it would take someone to walk this whole property. And as we zoom in, maybe kind of hard to see, but the imagery is really detailed. This is a specific spot here where you can see, or maybe you can't see, but the stream channel has kind of changed a bit. Water's kind of starting to flow around vegetation where maybe it previously hadn't. From our imagery, we can also see places where there may be some sediment deposition that wasn't there before. So it can really kind of offer some helpful insights to the wetlands team as they're kind of understanding what's going on this site. In a case like this, where you have kind of this giant easement that is flooded and potentially dangerous to send someone out and walk, the drone is a really helpful alternative. We can go capture this imagery. They can review it in the office. If there are certain spots that they want to head out and field verify, they can get that accurate location and go navigate to it. Again, without having to send them kind of wandering around this flooded easement, trying to figure out what's going on there. We are going to be assisting FSA in some of their ECP damage assessments. We're really hoping to use the drone for some of that. So if you're interested in some hopefully good examples of how we can use the drone to assess flood damage in a more agricultural setting, hopefully we'll have some kind of cool information to share with you all in the next couple of months. I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint, and I promise that's the last time that will swap. Cool. I just want to hit a couple key points of kind of, what's the purpose of drones and what we can use them for. We've hit on a number of these already, but really it's just much quicker than a traditional survey. So we're going out to these sites that are several hundred acres, and we're spending maybe an hour, maybe two at most. For these sites that would take someone, a whole day, if not more, to kind of walk around and survey. We can access these areas that are hard to reach or potentially dangerous. That comes into play a lot with flooding. If you have these flooded fields that you can't really send someone out to walk, the drone is a great way to capture that information. Shannon touched on elevation data a bit. That's more focused for our engineers, but if anyone has interest in that, we can talk a bit more about that. Each time we go fly the drone, we are collecting kind of up-to-date aerial imagery, and we can use that to monitor change over time. So kind of thinking from an NRCS perspective, you could really document the entire planning process. You could go out and you could capture imagery and identify resource concerns in that imagery. You could revisit that site after work has been implemented and use it to certify that. And then hopefully head out one more time and capture imagery and hopefully show some kind of beneficial changes based on the work that you've done out there. We've kind of tried to get at that a bit with our wetlands team, thinking about some easements down in Addison County. There are some that we've done several flights on where we kind of have imagery of kind of normal non-flooded conditions. And then we've captured imagery both in summer flooding last summer and some winter flooding last winter as well. So we kind of have that record that we can use to understand kind of what's going on at this site and how things may be changing, and hopefully how this wetland is kind of doing its function and capturing and kind of storing some of this flood water. Drones are also just kind of a new technology, so it could be kind of a benefit to think about how those might fit into your work and gain some experience with them. Kind of getting to the end of my presentation here, want to talk about kind of where we're headed in the future and what we're focused on. Our primary goal kind of is still to support NRCS conservation planning. Shannon mentioned that most of our time is funded through a conservation innovation grant. So we're really still working with NRCS to understand how can we use this drone and what can we use it for to save our staff some time. We are hopefully getting some new equipment. This has been kind of a long process for us, but we are purchasing a multispectral sensor. We don't have to spend too much time getting into the weeds of that, but essentially the imagery we've looked at today is all true color imagery. So using cameras that capture the same wavelengths of light that your eyes do. This sensor would allow you to capture different wavelengths in the infrared spectrum that we can't see, but could offer some really interesting insights about things like plant health and kind of monitoring different plant productivity across a field. We're also really interested in using it to try to tease out individual species for the purpose of identifying invasives. So we're really hopeful that we can fly kind of really large sites and pick out invasive species rather than having to send someone to walk that whole site and kind of ID those manually. And then the last thing is just engaging with you all a little more and learning how we can support you all in the awesome work that you do. So I'll kind of transition to my last slide here and kind of my ask of you all. We have this flight request form. This is what we use to kind of receive requests from the field. We'll have Lauren, I believe. Yes, she's our awesome organizer. She'll share this with you all. And really what we're asking is that if you can envision this technology in your work and would like support from us, please do fill out this form. Feel free to reach out to us over email with any questions. But I think a lot of the work that you all do overlaps a lot with the work that NRCS does. So I think there's a real opportunity for us to help out in some of the projects you have. But also just thinking about where this program is headed and where we're moving into the future. As we kind of move towards the end of our grant, we're starting to have conversations about what this program looks like a year from now. And on a personal level, I would love to kind of expand the work we're doing and do more to support the broader partnership and the broader work that you all are doing. And kind of the start of that conversation is understanding if there's interest and if there are ways that we can support you. So if you have some time to think about it and you have ideas, please do reach out as we think about kind of what we can do and what we want to do in the future. So that's it for me.
Great job.
Yeah. 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 So that's this sensor that I'm talking about here. No, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah. But yeah, essentially that's going to give us some kind of new data products. So taking a look at different plants and which parts are more productive. It allows you to kind of detect things that are not visible to the human eye. So hopefully in a couple months, we can come to you and say like, here's some more concrete examples of how we can use it. But thinking about things like maybe certifying cover crops instead of trying to zoom into an imagery and see like, we can actually very clearly see like, this is a healthy plant that's producing chlorophyll. It's been established and it's doing great.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
Regarding the elevation data. You talked a little bit more about what that is given us, the effect of vegetation. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking about, we do a lot of elevation surveys to design restoration projects.
Yep.
We're measuring that, the total station and so inflation levels, down to
Yep.
The 10th of a foot.
Yep.
What?
Yeah.
Make that fair.
Yeah, it's a great question. So for our drone currently, we don't have any kind of LiDAR sensor. We're using a camera, so it's photogrammetry. And so when you ask about vegetation, that is something that introduces some issues. So if we're kind of flying over, a pretty open farm field, we are able to see the ground and get that really accurate elevation surface. And we actually go out and they call them ground control points. So we'll shoot some points with a survey GPS and kind of feed that into our software so that we're having some checks on accuracy. But in terms of like, once you start getting into heavily forested areas where it's hard for a camera to actually see straight through to the ground, it is introducing a lot of funkiness. Or reed canary grass, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Is there the technology up there with LiDAR?
Yeah. 100%. And that is, I think, something that's changed in the past just couple of years. That LiDAR used to be this really expensive piece of equipment where you had to contract out a plane to fly it. They've now, in the past couple of years, there are LiDAR sensors for drones that are relatively affordable. And, you're obviously not gonna be able to cover the same distance that a fixed wing aircraft could. But if you're talking about just individual sites, yeah, you absolutely can do that on a drone. It's something we've considered purchasing. As of now, we haven't, but I certainly would hope in the future that we explore purchasing a LiDAR sensor. Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's purchase a LiDAR sensor.
Okay, sure.
I guess, are you guys familiar with the whiteout solution and the
Yeah.
we're using?
Yeah.
We've used that on a couple of projects. We're using it on a flood study in Montgomery right now.
Yeah.
And monitoring the channel evolution of a stream where we took a dam out. And the data is so important, and it's also, we can capture the flow, the water level in the stream, which most LiDAR can't do.
Yeah.
I think someone needs to fund this.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if there's actually maybe like some clean water design funds that could go towards that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
it's so expensive. Whiteout can only do so much.
Yeah.
I think that there would be a huge market, especially like what Chris is saying, if we could reduce everybody's on the ground survey.
Oh, yeah. for sure.
I think in bond would reduce project costs.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I'd love to talk more with you about that. The sensor that White House Solutions has is probably a little more advanced than we would likely need a different drone. I mean, it's a huge, but it's really cool. And what Lauren's talking about is instead of a normal LiDAR sensor that hits water and stops, it actually penetrates through the water. So you can rebuild not just the ground surface and the stream surface, but actually get insights into what's below the stream. It's pretty cool. I think yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. Yeah, and I know that, yeah, but I do think turbidity is an issue. Like I know I went to a talk they had just a week or so ago, and people asked about flooding, and they kind of talked about how their sensors really only work after the water's cleared up a little bit. There's a limit to what you can see when the water's turbid. But yeah, I'd love to have more conversations about it. I think, yeah, it's a complex solution too, because you have to purchase a LiDAR sensor, but you have to think about having software to process that, having computers that have the specifications to process. It's an unbelievable amount of data. And when you start thinking about how to store it and share it.
Well,
Oh yeah. Yeah, they're very cool. Yeah, super cool.
So yeah,
Yes.
legal outfits.
Yeah. Are you saying we need to improve our fashion a little? Hats would be good, yeah. We can do hats. Yeah. Yeah.
People have questions, because lunch isn't here yet, so let's go some more time, please. Nina.
Yeah.
Oh, I might call it the A or T map. After the floods, there's a lot of flame flags and it's loaded into a map.
Yep.
You can navigate it, so it's like a pre-drone flight, like technically.
Yep.
It's not like full state, but it might be a nice, like documentation that the ground have readily available. So
Yeah.
like everybody-
Yeah, it's a really cool resource if you haven't checked it out. I know they did it last summer. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of it's a collaboration of UVM and Department of Transportation. There's probably some more. VCGI did a lot of work with it. But it's really cool. It's a public resource that they've captured a ridiculous amount of imagery. And I know we talked a little, trying to kill some time, but we talked this morning about reporting and getting assistance from FEMA. I know UVM, their data that they collected with drones was sent to FEMA and did help get a disaster, at least the prior summer, get a disaster declaration sooner than it traditionally would have, because they were able to provide this really detailed imagery. So, yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question. And yeah, we did talk about this a bit. So with this new sensor, you basically can kind of understand like relative chlorophyll levels in a plant. So I could definitely see it being really helpful for tree survivorship and kind of tree plantings. The only caveat would be if you have if you're going to check hey, did these trees survive last year's planting, and it's just a little twig without any chlorophyll, we're probably not going to be able to pick it up. We could still try to fly the drone and see if visually can I see here's a tree. But at least to my knowledge, the sensor was really only going to be able to pick up hey, this is a tree that has leaves and is producing chlorophyll. It's healthy. Yeah.
You mentioned identifying the invasives or invasive mapping with multispectral sensor. So I know that green clearing grass shows white on fluorescent red.
Yep.
Frequently, is that mostly reflected, or have you figured out signatures or other invasives?
Yeah. We have not figured out signatures yet, and that's yeah. Yeah, I know we've talked with some of our wetlands team that some of the invasive plants are holding their color a lot later into the fall than others. So I can see that as a scenario. We have in the past done flights just with our normal cameras looking at purple loose stripe, I believe it's called, and trying to pick out that purple signature. It didn't work great, so we're kind of hoping with that multispectral sensor, we'll have more to choose from there. But yeah, that is kind of the idea. If you fly a site, you've got reed canary grass that's showing up as white, we can kind of feed that into a kind of machine learning image detection thing where it's picking out saying, this is where we think the reed canary grass is, instead of having someone have to walk that entire site. Yeah.
I got some more time.
Sure.
I was at the UVM field day the other day, and there was a gentleman who was this epic drone.
Yeah, I saw pictures of this, I
That
think.
had cedar
Yeah.
in it.
Yeah.
Like, can we go there?
We can go anywhere. I would say that certainly our current drones, we can't really go there. I feel like seeding a field is probably a bit outside of the work we've currently been doing.
Other states that they use drones for cover.
Yeah.
The Board of Securities contract, they purchased them for cover.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
With racks, and helicopters.
Right.
But if you're basically, that's what you need, right? Otherwise, it's not likely to get covered crops.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess from like a VACD perspective, I'm not sure I see us doing that, but I think it is kind of something farmers are going to, and kind of precision ag in general. And I guess I'm sure there are plenty of concerns with seeding, but I think the benefit is you're not driving on the land and compacting the land.
Great job.
Thank you.
So I need you guys to know, like, I plan these things really well, and then stuff happens, and here we are. So I'm actually going to take the opportunity. If you have art at your table, Arena is going to be in charge over there. She just found out right now. Let's put it on some murals, and let's put some stuff together, and let's see what we need to add. And then when lunch comes, you can all disperse like crazy. How does that sound? Great. Bring your art and add more art. Folks on Zoom, we're gonna aim for 11:50. I will put some stuff in the chat if that changes. Please keep eating, but also turn your listening ears on. And we're gonna go not in all this order. I'm just gonna see if people are done eating, and then I'm gonna pick on you, which is what I did here. All right, roundtable organization updates. Please make sure you introduce everyone on your staff that's here. So clean your face off if you're gonna be called on.
Okay. Hi, I'm Katie Dar with the Lake Champlain Basin Program. Hopefully you've seen we have a new State of the Lake report that was released in June. I have some hard copies in my car if anyone needs that. Okay, great. And I also, our chief scientist, Matt Vaughn, also did a presentation that has been recorded on YouTube if you want to just watch that, so that the Basin Programs Love the Lake talks. I can send you the link and a link to the report also. More exciting, our Clean Water and Healthy Ecosystem Grant RFPs have been issued, and we have $5.5 million across 8 categories. Proposals are due October 3rd. I'm not going to list the 8 categories, but check those out also. And then related to my neck of the woods of the Basin Program work, the Vermont Citizens Advisory Committee is working on their annual action plan. They present that to the legislature every January. The overarching themes this year are water quality, biodiversity, and climate resilience. And so there will be some ag related things in that as well. That's it from the Basin Program. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna be VHCB right now. She said, I'm prepared. So there's no updates from, sorry, Vermont Housing and Conservation Board. Usually Holly's here, but they have a retreat today. So that's why she's not here. There's nothing new from the viability program this time around, besides plugging the upcoming conference of Sowing Seeds, Conservation Connections for a Resilient Future on October 7th at VSU Randolph. All are welcome. Registration will open as soon as possible, likely next week. And they have a great mix of sessions, for example, flooding mitigation and resiliency, riparian area restoration, conservation legislation, such as 30 by 30, urban conservation / stewardship, and some technical workshops, such as appraisal fundamentals, stewardship technology, private benefit analysis training, and that's just a few examples. For those interested in learning more, there should be a link right on the homepage of the VHCB website, and folks can sign up for email updates. And then an update from Nathaniel Johns, who is the Clean Water Program Manager. As far as updates, the programs that I work on are just in the mem from Magog, so not over here. But if you want, we could let them know that the new Leahy mem from Magog Clean Water Program, funded by the Great Lakes Fishery Commission. This last round, they funded 12 proposals, a mix of capacity building grants, riparian land acquisitions, and other projects. There will be another funding round later this year for that program. And through their role as the QUISP, or the Clean Water Service Provider, they recently completed their first project, Valley Brook Phase 1, and have 7 others underway. If anyone working in that region, oops, no, ignore that sentence. That's the VHCB update. I'm gonna be kind and do the EVM extension update as well, because none of them can make it either. Basically, they have a lot of flooding resources on their website, including how to manage damaged crops and manage the silt. A lot of kind of what Nina was talking about earlier. That's their update. Vermont DEC Rivers Program update. So this is from Stacy. I could have formatted this better, but I didn't. So this is from Stacy Pomeroy, the Vermont DEC River Scientist for our region. And basically where her team fits into this work around flooding and resilience. They are continuing to work with partners to explore and develop possible restoration projects. And they can help you look at river corridor easements. So again, if anybody's willing to take land out of production and go into the river corridor easements, and maybe it would be paired with RCPP, maybe with the Land Trust, maybe with the River Conservancy, lots of potential mishmashing. And now that I'm on DEC, I'm gonna make Caitlin go next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kate. I use she, her pronouns. I am the Agricultural Grant Program Coordinator for the Department of Environmental Conservation. I don't have too many new updates. I'll just do my typical elevator pitch about RCPP. So we recently received another RCPP award for $10.7 million. 8.1 is going directly to ag and forestry producers. The sign-up deadline is tomorrow. Landowners get additional points in the ranking if they're bundled through DEC, so definitely have those come through me. But also the DCs are aware, and I think we're coordinating those going directly through me to get entered into CD as well. The 3 initiatives for our new RCPP is water quality, habitat, and flood resilience, and just kind of the nexus of those 3 things. And I think that's it.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
They all sign up deadlines from, but there's gonna be another sign. It's not just gonna go this year.
Yeah, I imagine there'll be 2 funding rounds. I think it'll depend on how the ranking shakes out and like what the numbers are, but with 8.1 million, and capacity, I have a feeling there'll be a second funding round. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks.
I'll kick it off, and if you guys want to add from your programs, just let me know.
I could give mapping updates and say what Act 121 is.
We do, sorry. All right. You're welcome.
The mapping update is really quick. We are mapping the entire state. Currently, this region won't be mapped until 2025, but things have been moving really fast in the rest of the state. Wetlands. This is class 2 wetland mapping. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's all wetlands, I suppose, but the class 1s already have like sort of more formalized mapping. So we are updating that if any of you ever work with the NWI, the National Wetland Inventory, or the Vermont Significant Wetlands Inventory, that mapping is all going to be getting a lot better over the next couple of years, and will be fully updated by 2026. The other thing is that we have Act 121 has, it's an act related to river corridor development, dam safety, and it has some wetlands implications. Sort of most pertinent is that the state goal of wetland management is going from no net loss to a net gain. The legislature has tasked the wetlands program with going through a rulemaking session and specifically requiring that projects with 5,000 square feet or more of permanent wetland fill or drainage need to compensate at a 2-to-1 ratio to cover that loss. Wants to establish parameters and ratios for permittee designed restoration projects. Establish an in lieu fee program for when a permittee cannot achieve restoration on site, and include wetland buffer compensation requirements. And they've given us a really fast timeline to do this. The rulemaking process is supposed to be finished by July 1st next year, and permits are supposed to incorporate these changes by September 1st of next year. And that's it.
Well, legislative stuff might be good. Do you want to talk a little bit about Act 250 changes? Yeah, you want to start with that?
Do you mind if people are on Zoom? Yeah.
So my name's Norman, he, him pronouns. I'd call myself the steward of the required agricultural practices because every question that could possibly be related to what a farm is and what farming is comes to me. An accessory on-farm business, it's something. Accessory on-farm business was passed through Act 143 and established a sort of land use category for farms that separated what otherwise would be considered commercial activities and made them a farming activity. So towns couldn't prohibit it explicitly. Recent changes through Act 181, which just passed, made it so that there's exemptions for Act 250 permits for some of these accessory on-farm businesses. So the sort of 3 categories are farm stores. So if you are opening a business and want to construct an improvement related to selling qualifying agricultural products, which has its own definition, I won't go into that right now. They are exempt from Act 250 permitting. If you are constructing an improvement related to the processing, production of agricultural products produced on your farm, it's exempt from Act 250 permitting as long as half of your total annual sales through this business come from products produced on your farm. This is all on a fact sheet too, so don't bother cramming it in if it's not working right now. Yeah, we'll send that to you. Anything related to, if you're constructing an improvement related to hosting farm events, you still got to go through Act 250 for that. That's sort of the, if it's a green light, yellow light, red light, that's the red light. Still got to go through Act 250 for that. So that's on a fact sheet. I'm going to send that to Lauren. Hopefully that'll circulate for everybody else. But those are some major changes for the accessory on-farm business rule. All right.
Yeah, we've seen lots of diversification of income streams and the desire to, Vermont has a really strong tourism industry. So a lot of farms are looking to say like, oh, can I have a farm store? Can I do farm stays? Can I host events? And sometimes that falls into like a permitting structure that they're not typically accustomed to navigating. So the legislature's carved out some spaces for these sort of accessory to the farm, but still really farm centric opportunities. In the rulemaking space, we have two rules that are open for public comment. The first is the BMP program rule. Public comment is open till the 9th of September, and we have a hearing next week, public hearing. The BMP program provides, most substantially, it does two things. The first is it provides EQIP assist, which is up to $200,000 in additional assistance towards an EQIP project that's being implemented on a farm. Typically, we're looking at manure pits, large heavy use area, and other sort of barnyard structures. The other thing that BMP can do is provide state-only projects up to 100,000. So this program was originally enrolled in 1996. So we're just really updating the rule. There's nothing substantially changing in terms of like what the BMP program does. But it was funny, it actually referred to in the 1996 rule. Apparently, EQIP used to be run by FSA.
Yep.
News to me. I wasn't around at that point. So there's some really old like references and language in the rule. But we anticipate the BMP program to still do essentially what it does today. The other rule is the TSP rule. Do you want to
Brittany Cole, I'm the permitting and nutrient management specialist for the Agency of Ag, work on the regulatory side. The TSP rule gives us the authority to regulate TSPs, to write nutrient management plans for farms. So like Bordeaux Brothers, ACS, Agricultural Consulting Services, Paul Stanley, like those independent folks. Does not apply to district folks that help with UVM go crop classes, but it essentially allows us to audit any plan at any time from the TSPs to ensure compliance with the 590 standard.
You have any questions for Brittany on the TSP rule? No. It's also hearing next week, right? Yeah.
Before the BM.
Same timeline. So September 9th is the deadline.
Thursday.
Yep.
Thursday 1 to 3 is TSP and 3 to 4:30 is BMP.
Yep. Yeah.
Microsoft Teams or in person in Montpelier, RSVP, please. You can go in person, yeah.
Yeah, you can attend in person, Montpelier,
You just have to RSVP.
but you have to RSVP because we don't have people at our doors, so you won't get in otherwise. They cut that part of the budget a couple of years ago. Just a couple other quick updates. So grant program wise, there is a grant open right now because of Resilient Food System Infrastructure Grant. We don't see a lot of grant programs that offer grants for processing or middle of the supply chain. So the Agricultural Development Division got some federal funding to offer this. It's a very unique opportunity. So farms that do on-farm processing or value-added production, this is basically eligible for equipment to do aggregation, distribution, processing, and other middle of the supply chain activities. Following that, we'll be releasing the SEEP program, Conservation Equipment Assistance Program. So this program supports waste management, cover cropping equipment, reduced tillage equipment, and some feed management equipment. And new this year, we're gonna support shoes. I always want to say boots, but it's not boots, shoes. So that folks can cut their hay a little bit higher up. So that's an effort that a lot of folks have been pushing for us to support for a few years. And again, it's just trying to cut hay at a little bit of a higher height so you have more residual vegetation and reduce ash content, which is really beneficial for cow nutrition. Sorry, no, I should have kept you up here. The Vermont Farmer Ecosystem Stewardship Program, longest name ever. We didn't come up with it. It provides an incentive to CSP. So if folks apply for CSP through NRCS, there is a state program that can incentivize that enrollment, either for completing the initial assessment in coordination with NRCS or executing a contract for CSP. So this is really great money if farms are maybe not willing to reach out to NRCS and participate in their programs. The state has an incentive program. It's probably not going to be available much longer than this year.
Oh, okay, no.
At this point in time, there is no other budget funds. We got a one-time bucket for that program.
Sure.
I know the deadline for NRCS programs is tomorrow, but if somebody has applied and then that deadline passes, they can still apply for our program afterwards. We have the capacity to bring people on after the NRCS deadline. We have very few applicants from this round, so I want people not to miss out on this.
Thanks. And then the only other update I was gonna give is, we do have a couple new inspectors, and I'm not sure if you guys want to introduce yourselves in the areas that you work in. But we have two folks who've, left into different positions. So Silas Rainville was working with us in Orleans and was he in Franklin?
Like
Men for Magog.
Connecticut, Riverman.
Okay, so Silas is now working with the Department of Forestry, under A&R, doing water quality stuff. And then Connor Steckel is the other one who worked up in this area, and he's now working as a grazing specialist statewide. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves in the areas you work in?
I characterize cystoid, which I split with Connor. It's now my input, but I believe is on the team's call right now. But yeah, so the two people kind of in this area.
Yeah, my name is Lee King. I'm actually working down in Aspen with Otter Creek, but I live here, so I jumped in.
And so just a reminder, we inspect large farms annually, medium farms every 3 years, and certified small farms every 7 years. So if you're ever working with a farm and they're like, oh, I don't have any problem, feel free to reach out. Farm inspection reports are public. We can provide them, and it's a really great sort of snapshot of what the major issues might be that that are happening on the farm. So don't be afraid to reach out. And then Ellen, do you want to introduce yourself and a little bit about what you've been working on?
Just one thing, Sarah, it's, similar to what it has been, money is getting tighter on the program. Just so you know, put in your application and they can ask you a lot of like reaching out to different. We're trying to pull everyone into the application process instead. For NRCS folks, we're gonna potentially equip assist projects. Make sure you're communicating with us as much as possible. We are getting to a point where we're not going to be able to necessarily offer financial assistance on all equip projects because we're got time. So best chance of getting funding is communication with us. I know we're another program Nina talked about it earlier, the seeding and filter strip program. We're hopefully going to be pushing out readings on that soon. We'll communicate those, but essentially we're pushing kind of wider harvestable filter strips around fields, and then also offering some options for seed down and row crop land into perennials. So just another potential option. If you want to look at that side at NRCS assistance, maybe it's important for a particular farm. That's another program that's going to be out there and available for folks to take advantage of. And yeah.
Hi, I'm Sarah, District Conservationist. NRCS. So some of you may have already heard, Travis Thomason, the State Conservationist, has decided to reorganize NRCS. So there are going to be some changes. Hopefully none of these changes really affect our customers because we're trying to make sure it's a smooth transition for them. He announced it at the all employees meeting at the end of July. And as far as I'm aware, he wants it to start October 1st with the reorganization. So what you have known as the Northwest Zone is now going to be the Northwest Team. And I'm only going to be overseeing Franklin and Grand Isle counties. Lamoille County will align with Orleans County, which is sort of in alignment. It is in alignment with the way FSA administers those two counties. So Dave Blodgett will now start to oversee Lamoille County. Have my PowerPoint. Yes. I just remembered.
Yeah, I just remembered too.
On my clipboard.
I apologize, I didn't download it. I'm so sorry.
No, that's fine, because there's only like one page in it.
Too many Sarahs. You just in this response.
Robert. Anyways, it's not. No, it's fine. It's fine. I was gonna show a visual map of the reorganization, but it's really not all that important. Stuff will be disseminated out. With the reorganization, there are gonna be some additional positions being advertised. Currently, there are 4 district conservationists that oversee all the 14 counties. That is gonna increase to 8. So there's gonna be advertisements for those positions. There's going to be other types of positions such as soil conservationist positions. And then we'll see how things settle out, I guess. So that's fun times. I have a little because I didn't want to lose Lamoille, so it's breaking my heart a little bit, but it's all good. I'll be fine. Felixia Moore is the new Assistant State Conservationist for Field Operations. She supervises the district conservationists and will also be supervising the foresters that we have. Cheyenne Rico is going to be our new outreach coordinator. She starts at the end of August. Adam Dellinger is the new RCPP coordinator at the state office. Diana Dellinger is the new Assistant State Conservationist for Programs. They're both starting September 8th. There are some other new folks within the field offices. I'm not going to list them all. The only other 2 that I will mention is one of our very own, Ileana Friday. She is on a detail helping the wetlands team at the state office. So Jim Eikenberry and Joe Bondi. And then our public affairs specialist, Trevor Saylor, will be leaving at the end of September. So that would be another position that will be backfilled and refilled. And that's all for updates. You want to introduce themselves? Oh, sure. Staff, introduce yourself.
I have been Nick Slogan on the planner in St. Albans office. I'm Emily J. Is Lily L.
And we do have a few folks out for reasons, vacation, Lauren Gibson and engineers. They normally don't come anyways, but Molly Baker and Josh Nappy are the engineers.
You're always welcome.
Yeah, I know.
There's lunch.
Yeah, and I am fighting for another engineer because I need another engineer. We'll see if that comes to fruition or not.
Do you want that?
Yeah.
I'm just jumping around. There's no rules today.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chris Smith. I'm with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Don't have any other staff here, so that'll go quick on that. I'm going to start maybe from the national level and then step down to the office level here in Lake Champlain. National level, just a couple things to note there. We will be like all other federal agencies closing out the fiscal year September 30. So we're doing a lot of year-end planning. Most of our field season has, most of our projects for this year are completing, and we're still looking at and planning projects for the next year. At the state, at the state level, I work out of the Lake Champlain Fish and Wildlife Conservation Office. We have been without a supervisor in that office now for coming up on 2 years in October. That position has been filled a couple months ago. Lori Early was a biologist in our office who's taking that supervisory position, which has been great. I've been acting, and there's been several of us have been acting in that, so that kind of allows us to focus on our jobs. The other thing that I will mention, kind of state and national level, we're expecting the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service basically governs the Endangered Species Act. A lot of endangered species stuff really doesn't affect Vermont that much. A lot of the endangered species are Western in the Western world, but we are going to right now the listing decision, we're waiting on a listing decision for 3 turtle species. The wood turtle, the Blandings turtle, and the spotted turtle. Vermont has both the spotted turtle and the wood turtle. Wood turtle is a riparian, one of the only turtles that is uses riparian areas and stream areas. And depending upon that listing decision, if they are listed under the Endangered Species Act, possibly as threatened, and I have no idea what the listing decision is going to be, that will affect some of the work that we're doing here and how we report on that work. So something to stay tuned, over the next couple of months when that listing decision is supposed to come out. I will mention at our office, at the Lake Champlain office, kind of our nexus to ag water quality is the Partners for Fish and Wildlife program, our private lands program, where we work with private landowners to do habitat restoration activities. Many of these are the same practices that we're doing to benefit water quality. A couple kind of key folks there. Katie Kane is the biologist that does mainly all of our riparian buffer and works very closely with the CREP program. So anybody has questions, Katie's been doing this now for I think 12 years and is very, very good at understanding riparian buffers and planning riparian buffers. So if anybody has questions about riparian buffers, please reach out to Katie. Ryan Crean is our wetland specialist and does most of the wetland restoration work in Vermont, both assessment, planning, design, survey. A lot of that work we're doing in conjunction with NRCS. So if there's anybody that has questions about wetland restoration. And then we have 2 aquatic biologists, Dave Minkoff and Julie Butler, that work on aquatic passage. One of the things that we really haven't done a lot with is private roads and farm roads as it pertains to, we mentioned, folks were mentioning, Nina was mentioning all the farm roads, the flooding with farm roads and culverts. There is a lot of opportunity to provide aquatic passage on farm roads, right? Everybody's walked over these farm roads that was a boiler tube or whatever they found in the barnyard to convey water. A lot of times that isn't great for aquatic passage, and there could be some better ways to do that. Julie and David spend all of their time thinking about aquatic passage, mainly on town roads, and would be happy to assist with any of those types of questions around aquatic connectivity if they come up. So I'll leave it at that. The next time we'll talk about kind of accomplishments of the projects that we have done this year, and what those roll up with all of you folks in the room, how we're accounting for those wetland and riparian projects. Questions?
Yeah, so when you talk about the farm roads, like I've visited a lot of properties over the years, Frank County, farm roads can be classified in class 4. Town roads.
Yep.
Are you able to work on those?
We are. And again, a lot of those are in different states of whether there's whether the town is maintaining that, whether the town is throwing it up, whether it's but yes, we could work on those. The caveat here is we don't work on all culverts. We will work on the crossing structures that are a priority mainly for brook trout, right? So there is a nexus here with the fish and wildlife resources. A lot of the culverts that in the Champlain Valley proper, we don't work on because there isn't cold water species there. So we're mainly focused on, as you start to get into the foothills and a little bit higher in elevation, where there's going to be brook trout that are moving through those systems. But that doesn't mean we couldn't provide some technical assistance, looking at some of those crossing structures on class 4 roads, class 3 roads. Very good. Thank you, Mark.
Your alleys?
Just a few things for the partnership. We're continuing to send out our newsletter. If you're not getting that, please connect with me or connect with Lauren. We'll make sure that you do that. We have some regular rotating orientation webinars or Q&A opportunities. Those are in the newsletter coming up on a regular basis. We're actively working on finding a venue for our annual meeting. We're going to have a winter annual meeting this year. The different venues have kind of different dates, but we're looking at the second week in March. hopefully somewhere between a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, but we'll put out the save the date soon, which we're really excited about that. And we're working on developing the Lunch and Learn webinar series for this winter, which is going to be science focused, have a theme. It'll be a multi-part series. For those who have interest or time, we do have all of our previous webinars recorded and listed. They're available on the vtagcleanwater.org partnership website under the blog. And I think that's everything.
Some staffing changes in Addison County. Gabriella Gaspakis, I believe is how you pronounce her name, took over as CED. She joined us from Montana. Avery Williams has taken over Orleans and Lamoille counties. Heather Thomas unfortunately departed with the agency back in April. I took over as CED in here in Franklin and Grand Isle counties in May. Denise Kellner is our new farm loan manager in Franklin and Grand Isle counties. I'm going to introduce you because you're here, but you're not new. Connie is our farm loan PA here in Franklin and Grand Isle counties. Alexis is a new farm loan officer trainee here in St. Albans. And I believe that's it for staffing changes. Right? Yeah, we are also doing a little bit of a transition. Our program technicians are reclassified, so they are now program analysts. So not a whole lot is changing. They just have a little bit more program responsibility now. Our biggest update is May 30th of this year. The national office wrote out of policy for ECP, our 2 and 10 year rule. So formerly you were only allowed to request ECP assistance 2 times within 10 years. That third instance of the same kind of weather damage, major land considered frequently damaged and ineligible for assistance. That's no longer a rule. Producers can come back to us for ECP assistance as many times as they want. So that's some great news. That's great news. And I wanted to just remind everybody here about PrEP payment limitation, that under our current PrEP agreement, the practice incentive payments is considered annual rental. So for some bigger PrEP projects, you might see that the practice incentive, so the 40% cost share that we pay at the completion of installation, if it's over $50,000, that's our payment limit. We can't pay them any more than that because it is considered annual rental. So that's just something to keep in mind if we start seeing bigger acreage PrEP projects until the agreement is renegotiated anyway. And then I feel like there was one more thing. Oh, IRA payments, the Inflation Reduction Act. I don't have county specific information, but we have paid $11.8 million in Inflation Reduction Act payments to loan borrowers. So that's basically loan forgiveness. So, and I don't have anything else. I forgot my paper at home.
Yeah, I think. Hello, I'm Emily Newmer. I'm the Agriculture Programs Manager with Vermont Association of Conservation Districts. We don't have a ton to update that's not already covered by all of these other partners. I will just remind folks, as I always do when I come up here, that if you are a TA provider for a particular agency or organization, and you're seeing a need that your organization can't fill, feel free to refer them to your conservation district because they can help them navigate to the right place. So just a reminder about that. And I guess I will introduce our new communications manager. Julia is here, so everyone welcome her. She's taken over for Molly. And as you all know, Molly is still here in the capacity of a district manager, so we're all grateful that she's still around. And you've met several of our other VACD employees through the loan demonstrations and other introductions. Am I missing any other VACD employees who have not yet been introduced? I didn't think so. All right, great.
Tucker, Vermont Land Trust. I don't really have any updates. We're still doing the same stuff, conserving farms, something we've done for many, many years. But I did want to just mention that as you're talking to farmers and stuff about flood recovery in riparian areas and stuff, have them check with VLT because sometimes some of our easements have some funny stuff that might be different than the state rules.
Hi, everyone. I'm Molly Varner. I'm the district manager with the Grand Isle County Conservation District. I don't have a ton of updates. It's been a busy summer, a lot of attending and hosting of events. And if you have any interest in keeping this day of meetings going, we will be in North Hero tonight with Friends of Northern Lake Champlain, hosting a community-wide meeting to teach the community about Lake Wise and talk about a North Hero sort of sub-watershed assessment that we're hoping to roll out maybe in the next year or two. As Emily mentioned, I'm officially going to be full-time with the district. So thank you, Julia, for letting me be free. And excited. We have a few grants through Watershed United for Vermont and Lake Champlain Basin Program to help really grow our organizational capacity and build up some of the foundation that we've been lacking as a district for a while now. So exciting things coming. We are really diving into pursuing more clean water projects in the islands, which is something we hadn't historically done. So that's sort of a new realm for us it's pretty common in the other districts. So we're excited to get some projects implemented on the ground. Again, probably in the next year or two when that actually moves to construction. We're continuing to partner with Franklin County NRCD and Lauren's very large staff who are an amazing help with us in the islands and offering ag support to the farmers there. So excited to continue that partnership. Oh, and this is our first year participating in the Streamwise program. And if you're not familiar with that program, it's through the Lake Champlain Basin program. And it allows us to go out and lead voluntary free assessments on properties that have a stream running through it and just help to make recommendations and provide landowners with best practices on how they can be more sort of buffer friendly. We still have to hopefully complete 8 assessments by spring of next year. So, and we're partnering with Friends of Northern Lake Champlain on this. So if you have any neighbors, friends, or yourself, if you live along a stream, brook, or river, and you would like a free assessment in the Grand Isle County or sort of northern side of Franklin County, please refer them our way. We'd love to get some sort of crossed off our list before it gets cold. And Peter from Lamoille County Conservation District isn't here today, but he is going to be hiring potentially 2 new ag-focused positions at the district. So those should be being advertised soon. So again, look out for those. And if you know anyone and can recommend, I know he really is looking for the help and looking to hire someone quickly. So yeah, I think that's it.
I didn't miss anybody. Did I? Okay, great. Yes, well, We like to wrap it up. We like to bring it home. Lauren Weston, if I haven't said that yet, which is quite possible I didn't. I manage the Franklin County NRCD team. I'm gonna make them all introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Kate Liberty. I'm very,
You gotta say it louder, huh? That's 6. Yeah. And Mel is not here today, but she's still on our team. Arena, Maria, and Morgan started on Wednesday. If they look really fresh faced to you, you have not seen them before. And Carrie actually came on from, she was our Eco AmeriCorps last year and is now full-time staff, which is very exciting. Very exciting. That's a lot of people, huh? Isn't it? Yeah. So we're actually also working on purchasing our own building, which will be very exciting too. We have an offer in, don't know if it'll get accepted. And then we'll go from there, which is a big deal. And if I'm stressed out this fall, that's why. We'll still be in St. Albans for sure. We have been working on that soil health training program all year, and the last one is actually coming up, I think it's September 12th at Cedar Circle Farm. If you haven't made any of the other ones, feel free to still come to this one. But also there's 12 really great webinars online if you or new staff or your mom want to learn more about soil health. And we are hoping to be able to continue that in some form, not 12 webinars, because woof, that was a lot of work. But a smaller version in the future, pending funding. We do have a skidder bridge rental program that I don't know if we've ever mentioned here. We have 2 skidder bridges. It's $100 a month to rent. So if you're working with a forest or someone doing forestry work and they need a skidder bridge, they're in Swanton, as long as they can come pick them up, $100 a month. So it's pretty good. We haven't had anybody use them yet, so it's a little devastating. We're also still working with more than 30 farms in the pay for performance program, which is very exciting. And I will continue to advocate, would love to see that funded into the future, anybody with money. Our farms are really benefiting. We're ramping up our clean water work, kind of similar to Molly. We're doing a lot of like stream restoration design project work right now. We probably have like 6 or 7 projects that we have contracted out for engineers to be building on, which is very exciting. Dorothy is working on updating the ag guide, which again, if you don't have one, please take them, and also just take them. We have hundreds. Give them to your producers. But if you have any program updates or new programs like the rebranding of the filter strip program, please connect with Dorothy so it can be updated for next year. That would be very helpful to have accurate information in there.
And fall, we'll send out to so there would be.
Yeah. But you already know it now.
Yes.
Oh, I have a slide. That one. We got a series of 4 maple related workshops and a Christmas tree grower event coming up this fall. So if you are interested, or if you have producers who might be interested, the dates on the maple might change a little bit. But we'd love to have folks showing up. And then we're working a lot with schools, a lot on recreation projects like the biking event on Saturday. There won't be tacos, but actually there might be tacos. And as always, tree plantings, tree sales coming up. It always feels like it's always coming up. It just is always coming up. This freaking sale. And lastly, I think, unless somebody yells at me, We have an open board member position on our board at the district. One of our board members, Carissa Stein, moved to Maine, and we're all very sad. But we would love anybody who might know anybody or want to be somebody on our board. We're allowed to have 5 voting members on our boards. And especially with a lot of big decisions about buildings coming up, it would be great to have a full board. So if you know anybody who they don't need to own land in Franklin County, but they need to live in Franklin County so they can rent. You know anybody who might be a good fit for a board and might have time for a meeting once a month? We'd love some help. Did I forget anything?
You're awesome.
Oh, thanks. Write these days down if you're interested in anything also. And slightly related, not really related. I don't know why I've said that. I'm having knee surgery this fall, so if you don't hear from me for a little while, that's why. We are going to pretend you don't see what I'm doing, because I should have done this earlier. There's a VAWQP survey. I don't know if Allie wants to introduce. And I'm gonna make a QR code for it, so it's really easy, unless there's already a QR code. Nope, okay, I'm gonna make a QR code for it.
Thank you. Okay. So we've been doing this regional coordination work for a couple of years now. This is the second contract. We're looking at, this is the first of 3 years. And the regional coordinators have been super great about doing some of their local surveying. And we've utilized surveying here and there for the broader partnership, but we've worked with the regional coordinators to develop a survey that each is going to go out statewide. And we're going to do it now at the second meeting of this 3-year contract, and then at the last meeting of that 3-year contract. And really, we're trying to get at where folks are working, what areas they're working in, what challenges they're seeing coming up, where there's gaps, feedback needs. And we're going to utilize this information now and track how it changes over time. But we really appreciate all that you do in your engagement in these meetings. What comes out of this directly goes to middle management leaders higher, and we're actively in the process of renewing our strategic plan. We're in our last year of our 5-year strategic plan. And so we're taking the information that's come out of the last few years. We're going to be taking this and we're going to be putting that into our priorities and how we're moving forward. So we appreciate you taking the time. It should only be about 10 minutes. But we want to give you the space to have thoughtful responses. And we know there's a lot of surveying, but we really appreciate it and we will use it. So thanks.
If that doesn't work with the projector, just you could go to the computer and see our image. And for anybody leaves, make sure we have all your art, and we're gonna like blow it up all over the social media and let's brag about who we are. So you can post your art. Yeah, just.
Are you guys having a competition between regions, Lauren?
Oh. No one else doing that. Are you kidding me? This is the fun meeting. We do just really want to express gratitude for all the work everybody's doing. And thanks for coming to the party every 6 months. It's nice to have a moment of like connection and fun and food. And I hope it feels good and you learned something, but also if you didn't learn something, that's okay too. But I'm just very surprised if you knew everything that was said today.
I learned multiple things today, so.
But yeah, thanks for hanging out with us and experiencing all of the ups and downs of working for agriculture, working with agriculture producers in these changing times. And I respect the hell out of you guys. So keep up the great work and do the survey and take tacos home. What a good problem to have. Thanks, everybody. Nice.
That would be so cute. Sorry. Thank you.